Jerry.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the worship service of the First Unitarian Church of Hobart. My name is Barb Langle, and I participate in the church by serving on the Board of Trustees. We are a religious community of people with diverse beliefs and shared values. Our diverse beliefs are expressed in our 6 sources, and our shared values are expressed in our 7 principles. Both can be found online at uua.org. Together, we strive to grow spiritually, build community, and live our values in the world. Michelle has an announcement.
Our church is collecting for Thanksgiving meal bags for the People's Turkey Drive, which supplies Thanksgiving meals to families in need in the Northwest Indiana region. So there's a list on the daycare window of what needs to be in the bags. The bags need to be here by next Sunday. So if you would like to just donate and not shop, you can give me money. And then we were having an in-gathering meal at the Methodist church that's just like a block away from here in Hobart on the 18th from 12 to 2, and all congregants are welcome, and the different churches that we're partnering with get together and have a meal and collect the bags, and then afterwards we take them to the People's Turkey Drive people to drop them off. So everyone's welcome. If you have any questions, just let me know. Also, I will be doing leaves after the workshop today, so if anybody's interested and would love to do leaves, then let me know. Thanks.
Pastor Tom.
I remember when I was a kid, just moving through the world, feeling like there were all these big people who knew how things worked, how to tie my shoes, how to ride a bicycle. And through the steps of getting older and becoming an adult and seeing folks move on, pass away, other folks born into the world, and strangely enough, becoming an adult myself, there's some sense that there's no longer those adults to work with, to oversee things, to make sure everything works okay. We end up having to take care of each other along the way, and to be taken care of by each other along the way. The past few weeks I've talked about how there's going to be a workshop after the worship service this morning about welcoming. As we move through this life, how is it that we show up for ourselves and for one another to welcome as whole beings each other into this existence that we share? So I hope that you'll join us. It'll start like 15 minutes after the worship service in this space.
Thank you. We are currently streaming our services online. The Joys and Sorrows portion of our service, however, is private, and we will take a break from streaming during that portion. Other than that, the service will be recorded and will be available for future viewing on Facebook, YouTube, and the church website. Today, we are celebrating Samhain. Did I say it right? All right. And we are remembering our beloved dead. Now, please let your Facebook and Twitter friends know that you're attending worship with hashtag First Unitarian Hobart. Silence your devices and enjoy.
It is now. We gather this hour as people obey, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of a life that we share together.
Now please rise in body your spirit for the doxology. We're in the order of service on the screen. The doxology.
Please be seated. During our worship services each week is a time for us to come back together to offer of ourselves what has been on our hearts and our minds that we've been carrying throughout the week, whether we have seen each other or not. Or maybe it's been weeks since we've been here and we've been carrying stuff for longer than that. So the invitation during our joys and sorrows sharing is to give those things voice, to offer them, to speak them into the space so that we can all share in holding them. And so I'm going to come around the room in a moment with this microphone, and I would just invite you to, if you have a joy or a sorrow to share, to just share with us your name so that we know who you are, and speak from the heart. So does anybody have a joy or a sorrow to share this morning? silent sanctuaries of our hearts, may we continue to weave the fabric of this congregation into ever more beautiful patterns. Today, we gather to honor the dying and the dead. Cycles of nature all around us turn our attention to this passing. The daylight in our hemisphere is getting shorter and shorter as the earth continues to tilt, which is even more dramatic in places like this with the end of the daylight savings time, as we experienced last night. Many of the leaves that were once green and then started to turn gold in the sunlight around this time of year fall to the ground that has been steadily cooling, and on which they will soon become as brittle as the bones of elders. Grass and gardens have hunkered down for the winter, turning their energy downward and inward. But before this final loss, there is a blaze of color. One last burst of accomplishment, one final hymn of praise to the fullness of life that is about to dwindle.
O sacred season of autumn, be my teacher, for I wish to learn the virtue of contentment. As I gaze upon your full-colored beauty, I sense all about you an at-homeness with your amber riches. You are the season of retirement, of full barns and harvested fields. The cycle of growth has ceased, and the busy work of giving life is now completed. I sense in you no regrets. You've lived a full life. I live in a society that is ever restless, always eager for more mountains to climb, seeking happiness through more and more possessions. As a child of my culture, I am seldom truly at peace with what I have. Teach me to take stock of what I have given and received. May I know that it's enough, that my striving can cease in the abundance of God's grace. May I know the contentment that allows the totality of my energies to come to full flower. May I know that, like you, I am rich beyond measure. As you, O autumn, take pleasure in your great bounty, let me also take delight in the abundance of the simple things in life, which are the true sources of joy. With the golden glow of peaceful contentment, may I truly appreciate this autumn day.
Please rise as you are able and join in singing the words on the screen or in the order of the service, the melody of hymn number 52.
Clouds drift
people, the final harvest, please be seated. For many people, the final harvest, the end of the agricultural and pastoral year, also marks the end of the cycle of the earth's seasons, and giving thanks for its gifts, and a time to acknowledge the human lives that had to come to an end, and to give thanks for their gifts.
As historian Ronald Hutton has written, Halloween developed from the Celtic feast of Samhain, which marked the end of summer and the beginning of winter. For the Celts, Samhain was the beginning of the year and the cycle of the seasons. Samhain was a time when the Celts acknowledged the beginning and the ending of all things. As they looked to nature, they saw the falling of the leaves from the trees, the coming of winter and death. It was a time when they turned to their gods and goddesses, seeking to understand the turning cycles of life and death. Here on the threshold of the cold, barren winter months, it was also a time of feasting and celebration, as the weakest animals were culled to preserve valuable foodstuffs and provide food to last until the following spring. For the Celts, Samhain was a time when the gates between this world and the next were open. It was a time of communion with the spirits of the dead, who, like the wild autumnal winds, were free to roam the earth. At Samhain, the Celts called upon their ancestors who might bring warnings and guidance to help in the years to come. Samhain was a time for change and transformation, where both the past and the present met with the uncertain tides of the future yet to come. It was a time for magic and divination, when druids and soothsayers would forecast the events of the coming year. The high kings of Ireland held a week-long feast for this purpose, where seers foretold the coming patterns of farming and hunting, the times of eclipses and storms, and whether neighboring kings were plotting warfare. For the Celts, Samhain was both an end of summer feast and a time of communion with the realms of the spirits.
For centuries, Finns have celebrated their new year and honored their dead in their autumnal feast of Kekri.
Much older even is the Babylonian Sacred Mound Festival, another harvest feast honoring the dead.
The most profound of all Egyptian festivals were those which reenacted the death, burial, and resurrection of Osiris. From the New Kingdom onwards, the human dead were symbolically incorporated into a great cycle of death and regeneration that encompassed all created beings and things.
The Christian church had, from early on, honored its dead, especially those martyred by Roman emperors. By the middle of the 9th century, the Feast of All Hallows, or All Saints, was observed by Christians all over Europe on November 1st. 3 centuries later, the Feast of All Souls, those souls believed to be in purgatory, was officially established as November 2nd.
On these 2 days, many people with cultural connections to Mexico celebrate the Day of the Dead, which is connected to Catholic and Mexican Indian traditions.
Many Buddhists and Taoists around the world celebrate a harvest feast that is popularly known as Festival of the Hungry Ghosts.
Hindus observe Diwali, the Festival of Lights, around this time of year to welcome the winter. It is celebrated as the New Year in some parts of India, but in Bengal it honors the goddess Kali.
Wiccans today still celebrate Samhain, lighting a hearth fire to welcome the cold season and the remembered spirits of their beloved dead.
Fire often has a special importance in festivals honoring the dead. Whether bonfires, hearth fires, or sauna fires, whether candles or oil lamps, torches or lanterns, their light can symbolize the honor accorded the dead or deities of the dead. It can provide illumination for the ancestors to find their way to their former homes and guide their spirits away when the visit is over.
We light these candles of remembrance now, so that our own beloved dead may find their way to our hearts, that we may be open to the wisdom and messages of hope and love that they would offer us, if only we would listen and heed.
We light this candle to beckon our parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents, all the ancestors to whose love and care and sacrifices we owe our very existence.
We light this candle for other family members who have gone before us, spouses, partners, children, siblings, aunts, uncles, cousins, nephews, and nieces, and give thanks for the richness and love they provided in our lives.
We light this candle for our members of our community who have died this year, in thanksgiving for the contributions they made to the life of this community.
We light this candle for ancestors of another kind, for those who have given life to our minds, for teachers, mentors, writers, and sages, for scientists and artists who imparted knowledge and wisdom that outlived their earthly existence.
We light this candle for our spiritual ancestors, for all those who have taught us the values by which we live, who have given us confidence in our own spiritual worth and the worth of every creature.
I cannot think of them as dead. Walk with me no more. Along the path of life I tread, they are gone before. They all gone before. And still there's silent ministry within my heart. As when on earth they walk with me and let me taste peace, and let me taste peace. Their lives are made forever mine, what they have been has left henceforth its seal and sign engraven deep with peace, engraven deep.
In times past, one of the most famous customs of All Souls' Day was the ringing of church bells to comfort the departed spirits. Perhaps they also provided a comfort to the living, signaling that attention must be paid both to the lives of those who have gone before, passing down their gifts of hope and love, and to our own lives, so that when it is our turn, we too might leave a legacy of love. We will now call the names of our beloved dead and invite you to respond after each list of 5 names by chanting "What is remembered lives." And after the litany of names, the ringing of bells will invite us to a few moments of meditation.
What is remembered live? What is remembered live? What is remembered lives? What is remembered lives?
Megan Sporney, Beej Reese, Joe Langle, Laura Brooke, Teresa Chirilla.
What is remembered lives? What is remembered
Gabriel, Genevieve Wheatley, Dave Hallwood, Dave Claudio, Brandon Schomber.
What is remembered is, what is remembered is.
Brian Neely, John Van Cleef III, Finley Campbell, James Raffaneau, Liberty Winnell.
What is remembered is, what is remembered is.
George Maslankowski, Jerry Shea, Gavin, Melody, Abigail.
What is remembered is, what is remembered is.
Tanya Nelson, Jerry Cool, Kyle Kolisinski, Kim Burge, Erica Gonzalez, Victoria Davila.
What is remembered is, what is remembered is.
Please rise in body or spirit. No? Oh, sorry.
We have invoked the spirits of our ancestors and other beloved dead. May our hearts receive whatever they have to tell us. Now,
Please rise in body or spirit and join in singing the words to Abide with Me on the screen or in your order of service. You may recognize the tune, but the words have been updated from the ones you may be familiar with.
Please be seated. One of the customs associated with All Saints and All Souls Days in the British Isles was the giving of soul cakes to groups of poor people, especially children, who came to the door begging. This offering to the poor was sometimes done in the name of the dead who had lived in the house, and this act of kindness by the living was believed to help the souls of the dead in purgatory, easing their pain or shortening their stay there. Although soul cakes were originally oat cakes, eventually the term was applied to any treat, whether food or coins.
Let us now make our soul cake offering to the poor. We give to remind ourselves of how many gifts we have to offer. We give to remember that we are part of something bigger than ourselves. We give because we believe in music and friendship. We give with the faith that together we have enough. You have come to this gathering with gifts of food, the ingredients for making a meal or dish that was the favorite of one of your beloved dead. I invite you to come forward with your offering, and in the name of your beloved dead, put them in these baskets, which will be taken to share the harvest, to feed the poor and hungry of our community.
And so we'll also be collecting our usual share the plate, change for change, and to benefit this congregation. We have 4 volunteers to help us with our offering.
For your gifts, your service, and for being here today, we give thanks.
Every loss we experience in life can remind us of that ultimate loss to come, the loss of our own life. No matter how rich or poor we are, no matter how talented or inept, no matter how happy or miserable, we all must die. And that thought can be terrifying. And perhaps the grief in that is what lurks behind every other grieving in our lives.
Margaret, are you grieving over Golden Grove on leaves, like the things of men you with your fresh thought care for? Can you? As the heart grows older, it will come to such sights colder by and by, nor spare a sigh, though worlds of wanwood leaf meal lie. And yet you will weep, and know why. Now, no matter, child, the name, sorrows, springs, are all the same. Nor mouth had, no, nor mind, expressed what heart heard of, ghost guessed. It is the blight man was born for. It is Margaret you mourn for.
Please join in a moment of silent meditation. For some people, the terror of dying can be relieved by the joy of living a meaningful and generous life. Rachel Carson, the mother of the environmental movement in the United States, may have been one of these. She had achieved fame and fortune with her books on the sea when she discovered in her mid-50s that she had cancer. And yet she spent her last years writing a book that would expose the lethal practices of the chemical industry and for which she would be both praised and pilloried. One morning in 1963, approaching the last autumn of her life, Carson sat with her best friend near the edge of the sea in Maine. There they watched a migration of monarch butterflies. Later, Rachel wrote to her friend,
"For me, it was one of the loveliest of summer hours, and all the details will remain in my memory. The blue sky, the sounds of the wind in the spruces and the surf on the rocks, the gulls busy with their foraging, alighting with deliberate grace. But most of all, I shall remember the monarchs. Unhurried drift of one small winged from after another, each drawn by some invincible force. We talked a little about their life history. Did they return? We thought not. For most, at least, this was the closing journey of their lives. But it occurred to me this afternoon, remembering that it had been a happy spectacle, that we had felt no sadness when we spoke of the fact that it's the end of their cycle. And rightly, for when any living thing has come to the end of its cycle, we accept that it is natural. For the monarch butterfly, the cycle is measured in a known span of months. For ourselves, the measure is something else, a span that we do not know. For ourselves, but the thought is the same. When that intangible cycle runs its course, it is natural and not an unhappy thing, a life comes to an end. That is what those brightly fluttering bits of life taught me this morning. I found a deep happiness in it. So I hope, may you.
For some, the sting of death is eased by hope of resurrection. In the account of the resurrection of Jesus and the words attributed to him in the Gospels, many Christians see a promise of their own eternal life and call upon him to grant eternal rest to their beloved dead.
Many religions honor a deity of death, some of whom are also deities of rebirth.
The Feast of Samhain is the occasion on which there was a ritual mating of the Dagda, one of the principal gods of Old English tradition, and Morrigan, the goddess of war fury of an early Irish tradition.
Some have honored the Morrigan as a triple goddess, maiden, mother, and crone. The virgin, the seed, the child, becomes the birth-giving creator mother, the fruitful plant, who in turn becomes the death-dealing crone, the withering life. This trinity, represented by the waxing moon, full moon, and waning moon, also reflected the stages of human life. Each stage has its own importance in the cycle of life.
The triple goddess of maiden, mother, and crone is one that many Wiccans and other neo-pagans worship.
The Hindu goddess Parvati is generally portrayed as a gentle, nurturing mother goddess, but is also associated with several fearsome forms to vanquish evil beings, such as Kali. In her various forms, she alternately gives birth to the world or dances at cremation grounds, gathering up the souls of the dead. As May Sarton suggests in her poem about Kali, while our final death is natural and inevitable, every phase of darkness and dying is part of our living.
The kingdom of Kali is within us deep. The built-in destroyer, the savage goddess, wakes in the dark and takes away our sleep. She moves through the blood to poison gentleness. She keeps us from being what we long to be. Tenderness withers under her iron laws. We may hold her like a lunatic, but it is she held down who bloodies with her claws. How then to set her free or come to terms with the volcano itself, the fierce power, erupting injuries, shrieking alarms? Kali among her skulls must have her hour. It is time for the invocation, to atone for what we fear most and have not dared to face. Kali, the destroyer, cannot be overthrown. We must stay open-eyed in this terrible place. Every creation is born out of the dark. Every birth is bloody. Something gets torn. Kali is there to do her sovereign work, or else the living child will be stillborn. She cannot be cast out. She is here for good, nor battled to the end. Who wins that war? She cannot be forgotten, jailed, or killed. Heaven must still be balanced against her. Out of destruction, she comes to wrest the juice from the cactus, its harsh spine, and until she, the destroyer, has been blessed, there will be no child, no flower, and no wine. Kali, be with us. Violence, destruction, receive our homage. Help us to bring darkness into the light, to lift out the pain, the anger, where it can be seen for what it is, the balance wheel for our vulnerable, aching love. Put the wild hunger where it belongs, within the act of creation, crude power that forges a balance between hate and love. Help us to be the always hopeful gardeners of the Spirit, who know that without darkness, nothing comes to birth, as without light, nothing flowers. Bear the roots in mind, you, the dark one, Kali, awesome power.
Just as there is a relationship between birth and death within our own lives, there is an important connection between the life of one generation and the lives of the ones before and the ones after. The cycle of individual life swirls out of the lives before and swirls into the lives after, forming one endless human DNA spiral. The 19th century anthropologist Leo Frobenius studied the burial rites of the planting folk of the tropical jungles of South and East Africa, and there he discovered a practice that illuminates and celebrates this connection.
When an old kinsman of the Sib dies, a cry of joy immediately fills the air. A banquet is arranged during which the men and women discuss the qualities of the deceased, tell stories of his life, and speak with sorrow of the ills of old age to which he was subject in his last years. Somewhere in the neighborhood, preferably in a shady grove, a hollow has been dug in the earth, covered with a stone. Now it is opened, and there within lie the bones of earlier times. These are pushed aside to make room for the new arrival. The corpse is carefully bedded in a particular posture, facing a certain way, and left to itself then for a certain season, with the grave again closed. But when enough time has passed for the flesh to have decayed, the old men of the Sib open the chamber again, climb down, take up the skull, and carry it to the surface and into the farmstead, where it is cleaned, painted red, and after being hospitably served with grain and beer, placed in a special place along with the crania of other relatives. From now on, no spring will pass when the dead will not participate in the offerings of the planting time. No fall when he will not partake of the offerings of thanks brought in at the harvest. Moreover, the silent old fellow participates in everything that happens in the farmstead. If a leopard fells a woman, a farm boy is bitten by a snake, a plague strikes, or the blessing of rain is withheld, the relic is always brought into connection with the matter in some way. Should there be a fire, it is the first thing saved. When the puberty rites of the youngsters are to commence, it is the first to enjoy the festival beer and porridge. If a young woman marries into the Sib, the oldest member conducts her to the urn or shelf where the earthly remains of the past are preserved, and bids her take from the head of an ancestor a few kernels of holy grain to eat. And this indeed is a highly significant custom, for when this young new vessel of the spirit of the Sib becomes pregnant, the old people of the community watch to see what similarities will exist between the newly growing and the faded life.
We might not be a people comfortable with harboring the skulls of grandparents on our bookshelves. And maybe even we think ourselves somehow too intelligent to believe that the dead could have an effect on the life of the community, on the planting and the harvesting, on the outcome of pregnancy and child rearing. How foolish, we might think to ourselves. But if a man learns how to plant and harvest from his father, who learned it from his father, isn't the dead grandfather responsible in part for the crops? It is a common myth that maternal behavior is instinctive. Psychologists tell us it is learned from our own mothers and from their mothers in the community, and who learned it from their mothers. And if a woman takes these lessons to heart, is not her grandmother responsible, in part, for the health of her baby? Are not the ancestors, blood, kin, and other who have taught us the practical lessons and spiritual values by which we live to be thanked and honored? Many of us throw rice at newlyweds, perhaps not even aware that this is a blessing, a wish for fertility in the marriage. How much more powerful it might be for the people to take the kernels of grain from the skulls of grandparents who perhaps give them their earliest lessons in love. All right, we're too squeamish and law-abiding to use skulls. We might have to substitute a favorite mug or bowl of the ancestor. But the ritual could still provide a powerful experience of continuity. Life goes on. This we know. What we perhaps need reminding of is that it is the same life, one life, of which we have all been a little part.
We now call the names of our beloved newborn children and toddlers whose new life is a blessing in our families and communities. We invite you to keep in mind the ancestors whose spirits enliven these children and to respond after each set of 5 names by chanting the refrain as we did before. Those who have lived, have died, live on.
Jeremy, would you lead us once through that?
Those who have died live on. Those who have died live on.
Erica Garcia Waters, Apollo Cagliara, Archie Lundberg.
Now is the time of year for the harvesting of apples. A good time to remember the importance of this fruit. Concealed in the aromatic core of the gleaming apple, itself so suggestive of life's initial paradise and romance's glowing honeymoon, are seeds of darkness.
The game of bobbing for apples was likely brought from the Mediterranean to Britain in the 1st century CE and then incorporated into the Celtic holiday of Samhain.
The otherworld paradise to which King Arthur went after his death was named Avalon, or Apple Land.
An apple cut in half horizontally reveals a 5-pointed star at its core, the ovary of the apple. Where's the apple? No, it isn't half. Ah. Behold the apple, flesh and seed, the flesh for food, the seed to earth, that we may live by what we need, the rest to die, and thus give birth.
As we have come with food for the poor to honor our beloved dead, may we leave with food for our souls to honor all the living. And may the flame of this community live in our hearts until we are together again.
Please rise in body or spirit and join in singing the words to hymn number 108. How can I keep from singing? Life flows on in endless song above earth's lamentation. I hear the reels of a far-off hymn that hails a new creation. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? What though the tempest round me roars, I know the truth it liveth. What though the darkness round me glows, songs in the night it giveth. Death comes to all, no one escapes the anguish of its stinging. Yet knowing all good deeds live on, how can I keep from singing? The old ones die, the newborns cry, the circle's never ending. Each generation learns to love the mother's careful tending. What gives the meaning to each life? What keeps the planets ringing? Our hands across the ages reached, and hearts together singing. You may be seated. Please join us for fellowship after the worship service and bring your photos and memorabilia to share with one another.
And if you'll be joining us for the workshop starting in about 15-20 minutes, no need to bring a chair. We'll just use the pews. Just come on back in. Which thing?
Orientation. And bring your photos and memorabilia to share with one another.
And if you'll be joining us for the workshop starting in about 15-20 minutes, no need to bring a chair. We'll just use the pews. Just come on back in. Which thing?
And bring your photos and memorabilia to share with one another.
And if you'll be joining us for the workshop starting in about 15-20 minutes, no need to bring a chair. We'll just use the pews. Just come on back in.